Am I the a-hole for being mute to my cheating ex-fiancée even when she talks to me directly? I, 30 male, was engaged to a woman, 30 female, but a couple of months ago, I was forced to call off our engagement. We were close to our wedding when I found out she'd been having an affair under my nose for months with a close mutual friend. She unashamedly left the house in the middle of the night to see him, then came back and confessed to me where she'd been. The wedding we canceled cost thousands, and we're also trying to sell the house we've only lived in for 18 months. She moved out to stay with a nearby step-parent, and I'm in the house while we sell it. I hope none of you have ever been in this situation, but if you have, you'll understand the overwhelming mix of anger, pain, doubt, frustration, heartbreak, and sadness. She's still paying her share of the mortgage and occasionally comes back to get her things. When she does, she tries to make conversation, but I can't even look at her. I give one-word answers at best, blunt but not rude. She's changed her hair, bought new clothes, and walks around as if the world has moved on. As if she has moved on. The last few times she's been back, she's asked me casual questions like, "Did you have a good week? How's work?" Or "How are things?" And I've just ignored her. To interact with her hurts too much. We've had a few house viewings lately, and she wanted to ask about who would handle them. Again, I blanked her. She rolled her eyes and said things like, "Why are you like this? I just don't understand how you can be like this." And, "Why are you acting this way now? It's been a few months." The rage and sadness I feel when she says things like this are beyond words. She's seen me leaving the house before and has asked where I'm going, when I'll be back, and who I'm meeting. Again, no answer. The only replies she gets are via WhatsApp, and only when it relates to selling the house. I keep messages blunt and don't respond to pleasantries or anything unnecessary. Recently, she messaged me, calling me childish, juvenile, unhelpful, and stupid for refusing to talk to her. I want to scream at her for what she's done, for how deeply she's betrayed me. But I know better. I know she wouldn't listen, and it wouldn't change anything. Her last message was, "I just don't understand where this is all coming from." On the day we sell the house, I want to lock the door, silently get into my car as she moves out the last of her things, and drive away. I want to be a dot, an enigma, a nothing she never hears from again. Not even the sound of my voice. I can't trust myself to talk to her. I want her to be met with silence. The rest is silence. Am I the a-hole for refusing to talk to my cheating ex-fiancée, even when she tries to talk to me? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She cheated and broke your trust. You don't owe her conversation or kindness. Silence is a valid way to protect yourself. Not the a-hole. She made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. You don't owe her anything. Not a conversation, not an explanation, nothing. If silence is what helps you move on, then stick with it. She wants to feel better about what she did, but that's not OP's responsibility. OP is handling this in a way that protects his own peace. She wants to be able to pretend that you both parted on good terms, so she can feel good about herself. Tell her bluntly that you want nothing to do with her. She is a disgusting person, and to stop acting like there is any possibility that a reasonable person in your position could look at her and not want to puke. Then don't engage. The theory of her wanting to feel like it ended on good terms is plausible. I hadn't thought of it that way before. She checked out of your relationship a long time ago, and it probably took a few days at most for her to get over it. Therefore, she doesn't get why you feel as you do. She's happier, but doesn't care about the collateral left in her happiness's wake. It'll take time, OP. As others have advised, get some help. Even talking it out with friends can help. Think of it this way. You shed whatever she weighs in crap, and now she's someone else's plumbing problem. Not the a-hole. Shaking my head. The audacity of her to think you can treat people like crap and not have consequences. People are not toys. You can't play with them. Leave them when you are bored and expect them to still be there when you come back. There's a scene from a TV show that I think perfectly encapsulates this moment. A girl basically leaves her boyfriend for someone else and then has the audacity to say, "Why are you acting this way?" "This isn't you," when the ex is no longer at her beck and call. And the guy just says, "This is me. You just don't know what I look like when I'm not in love with you." That's a very valid way of looking at it, but the person I am now isn't reflective of who I normally am. Next story. Am I the a-hole for threatening to sue a mommy influencer? Me, 39 female, and my husband, 44 male, are currently looking for a new home after outgrowing our current starter home. We live in a suburb of a major metropolitan area. I'm an architect, and he's an attorney. Ideally, we're looking for a home with good bones that we can renovate to our taste, especially since I'm an architect and we have friends who work in the trades. Long story short, we toured a house 2 weeks ago that I thought might be a good fit. There was a lot that needed to be changed and updated, but for the price listed, I thought it was something worth pursuing. Flash forward about 4 days, and I get a text from one of my friends asking if I'd seen this, with a link to an Instagram reel from a local mommy influencer, 35 female. I click on it, and it's a security camera video of my husband and me walking through the home on a tour with our realtor. She took all the clips where I was talking about things I didn't like or what I would change and spliced them together to make it look like I was being highly critical of her home. The rest of the video is her saying she would never sell to us because we are mean and nasty people. Our faces are clearly visible in the video, I might add. My husband drafted a cease and desist letter yesterday, threatening legal action unless she removes the video, and now she's blasting us all over town. Her little army of mommy trolls is flooding my husband's law firm's social media accounts and my firm's webpage, which doesn't affect me much since I own my firm, but it does impact my husband. She still hasn't taken the video down, and we are fully prepared to take her to court if she doesn't. Our realtor is extremely embarrassed, and the seller's realtor is also mortified. Needless to say, we are no longer interested in the house and are taking a pause while we deal with this. 2 of our friends said we should have just tried to ride it out and let it pass because these things always blow over, but I just couldn't let her get away with this. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Get her. Take her down. Go after this toxic BS with as much ferocity as you want. 100% agree. I can't stand this kind of person manufacturing drama for internet clout. God, I can't wait until the influencer idiocy fades into the past and it's just one more stupid fad that we cringe about. Not the a-hole. Go after her and hit her as hard as you can. Also, I'd be surprised if the realtor doesn't try to bring some kind of action against them or drop them entirely, as this is going to make it near impossible to sell the property when anyone who walks it could end up internet fodder for some influencer wannabe. These influencers will do anything for engagement, even if it means defaming innocent people. Hope OP takes legal action and sets a precedent. Not the a-hole. Show no mercy. People like her continue to do things like that because nobody ever follows through and nails their ass to the wall. Secretly recording you could be enough on its own to cause her some major trouble. The supposed influencer is just craving for attention and needs to do this for a bunch of likes. People like this need to learn a lesson. Also sue her for defamation of character, harassment, screenshot everything. Find out your local laws concerning recording without consent, and take any money she's made from the views of you. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom to stop acting like I have my stepdad's last name? My mom and stepdad started dating when I, 15 female, was 7. My dad died a year before that, but 2 years ago, I found out that my parents were heading for divorce when he passed. My mom wasn't happy with him, so moving on faster was easier for her, and that was why she wasn't as sensitive to my feelings when she started dating my stepdad. I like my stepdad, and I'm glad my mom's happy. I have a good relationship with my half-siblings. There aren't any issues between us all. The only thing is that I have a different last name than them. My mom took my stepdad's last name when they got married. They asked about changing my name and possibly adoption, but I said no. It was dropped after that. However, my mom will occasionally use my stepdad's last name when talking about me instead of my actual last name. Sometimes she'll say I'm M. Smith instead of M. Jones, or she'll tell people I'm a Smith too. When my aunt was planning her wedding, she listed us as the Smith-Jones family, but my mom insisted it was just Smith. My aunt pointed out that I was a Jones, and my mom stopped fighting it, but still said we could just be Smith. She also full names me sometimes, but uses my stepdad's last name instead of my real one. It has always bothered me, and I've corrected her a few times, but I tried not to turn it into a fight. I'm not even trying to fight my mom now, but it sort of became one. What happened is that my mom ordered this family by heart tree, which allows you to include whoever you want. She used full names and put me down as Smith instead of Jones. I told my mom a mistake was made with my name, but she insisted it wasn't. I told her I didn't like being called Smith when I'm a Jones. My mom asked what the big deal was and said I'm still a Smith regardless. I told her I am a Jones or a Johnson, her old last name, but not a Smith. She asked why I didn't want to use the family name, and I told her I do have a family name, my family name. I told her she needs to accept that and stop acting like I have my stepdad's last name. My stepdad walked in on us talking/fighting about it, and he was hurt that I wanted the name changed. He asked if we could talk about it when things were calmer. I agreed, and my mom was like, fine. A couple of days later, my mom and stepdad brought it up again. My mom started off by saying that I'm the kid, and I don't get to tell her what to do. I told her I don't see why she keeps trying to act like I have a different last name than I actually do. I said it might be my dad's last name, but it's mine too, and I don't want to change it. I thought they had already accepted that. My stepdad said he had, but it hurt a little that I was so against using his name. My mom said I was making it a bigger deal than it is, and that she's not hurting anyone by doing it. She told me that Joan still goes on everything official, but she considers me a Smith too and thinks I should want to be. I told her I just want to keep my name the way it is. I don't like when she specifically calls me a Smith. I told her if she wants to call us the Smith family, that's fine, and I don't see why she's bothered by Smith-Jones. But at the very least, she should acknowledge that I am a Jones. My mom wanted me to apologize for telling her what to do, but I said I couldn't because I don't feel like I'm wrong for saying that after I had already told her how I feel. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Ask your mom how she would feel if she died, and your stepdad's new wife adopted your younger siblings and erased her existence. Or how he would feel if he died, and your mom's next husband changes his kids' names. This right here. The OP should ask her stepfather how he thinks his children would feel if he were to die, and their mother tried to change their last name to that of her new husband. She's done it once, she'll do it again. Not the a-hole. She needs to understand that you have a name and you have not changed it, nor can she change it for you. Thank you. I wish she'd try to at least, but she keeps saying she doesn't see what the big deal is. Then start calling her Betty Jones or some other made-up name. If your name doesn't matter, then hers doesn't either. Your name is literally how you present yourself to the world, and you are in charge of that. She can't rewrite history and make you a child of her new spouse. Not the a-hole. My mom said I was making it a bigger deal than it is, and that she's not hurting anyone by doing it. She is hurting you by doing it, obviously. Why are your feelings disposable to her? She doesn't think I should be hurting because of it. To her, most kids wouldn't want to feel left out by having a different last name. But it happens, and it's not the big deal she's making it out to be. Does it let people know I have a different parent? Probably. But I do. My stepdad isn't my dad, no matter how long he and my mom have been together. Last story. My husband and I had a huge bust-up, and he thinks I'm the bad guy for calling the cops when he wasn't violent. Am I the a-hole, and is this a normal reaction? My husband, 44 male, and I, 40 female, have been arguing a lot lately over housework. Today he lost it. He started throwing all my clothes on the floor from the drawers and cupboard. Went to the kitchen, pulled out all the dishes and cutlery, and threw them on the floor. Then he yelled at our kids to come out of their rooms and watch what he was doing. He went out for a 10-minute walk to calm down, but when he came back, he grabbed all his clothes and threw them everywhere, along with the laundry basket. By this stage, I was crying, shaking, and scared, so I called the police. I was also recording everything. He stopped when I called the police, and I told them not to come, but they did anyway. By the time they arrived, most of the clothes and dishes had been cleaned up by the kids. When they questioned him, he said, "I'll show you exactly what I did," and threw all the clothes and dishes all over the floor again in front of the police. Then he told them I needed to clean it up. He was argumentative, laughed, and told them he wasn't listening when they told him to stop talking over them. He insisted that it was his house, he wasn't being violent, and they couldn't kick him out, which is exactly what they did. They told him to pack his things and leave, but instead, he walked into our room, got undressed, and started showering with the police present and the door open. They waited for him to finish, pack up, and leave. As he got into the car, he blasted loud, offensive music and drove off. All of this behavior is out of character, and I find it really erratic. He can be loud and impulsive due to his ADHD, but never like this. I spoke to a friend who is divorcing her husband due to his bipolar disorder, and she noted some similarities. So now I'm wondering if there could be some underlying mental health issues. He is now blasting me for calling the cops, saying he is a peaceful person who would never be violent. He has told the kids that it's all my fault because I called the cops over something non-violent, and now he can't see them. My eldest, 16 female, is yelling at me, saying her dad would never hurt anyone and that I overreacted. How would you deal with this? Not the a-hole, obviously. His whole performance was to show you how he could be violent. And the fact is, if this was already out of character for him, who knows what could have happened? Violence isn't just being hit. Yes, OP, you're not the a-hole. What he did was violent. Maybe not physically toward you or the kids, but destroying the house, forcing the kids to watch, and openly defying the police is absolutely unhinged. You had every reason to call the cops. His behavior wasn't just an argument. It was a full-blown meltdown that scared you and involved your children in a way that no parent should. Honestly, I'd be more worried about getting you and the kids somewhere safe than worrying about whether he's mad at you. If this was truly out of character, then yeah, maybe there's a deeper issue, but that doesn't mean you should just tolerate it. Stay firm, and don't let him or your daughter guilt-trip you. She's a kid who doesn't fully understand what just happened. Notice who didn't think you were overreacting? The cops, the people who see this every day. And also the people more prone to ignoring it. If they didn't think he was out of line, they wouldn't have kicked him out. A lot of women get ignored over more than this, so it had to have seemed violent and unhinged to them. Not the a-hole. Ignore the people saying you were in the wrong for recording. If you were recording a peaceful incident, then it really shouldn't be that incriminating, should it? But if you asked me to describe a peaceful environment, it probably wouldn't include someone screaming and throwing things. His behavior was truly unhinged, and the fact that he did it with the police there shows that he doesn't care for consequences. Caught my girlfriend cheating, but her excuse was unbelievable. I never thought I'd be one of those people writing about infidelity, but here I am. A 28 male, have been with my partner 26 female for 5 years. I thought we had a great relationship, good communication, shared goals, and what I thought was mutual respect. Turns out I was wrong. A couple of weeks ago, I noticed she was being weird with her phone. She never used to be secretive, but now it was either glued to her hand, flipped over on the table, or tucked away in her bag. I didn't think much of it at first because I trusted her, but the signs started piling up. She'd stay late at work more often, disappear for hours on weekends, and when I'd ask her about it, she'd get defensive. The breaking point came last week. She said she was going to a friend's house, but didn't come home until 2 a.m. Something just didn't feel right, so I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone while she was in the shower. There it was, texts with some guy named Tom. Flirty messages, heart emojis, plans to meet up. I felt sick to my stomach. One message stood out. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. When she came out of the shower, I confronted her. She looked panicked but quickly tried to play it cool. And then she hit me with the excuse of the century. It's not what it looks like. I'm helping him practice flirting because he's bad at talking to women. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh or say she was kidding, but she was dead serious. I couldn't believe she thought I'd buy that. I asked her about the "last night was amazing" text, and she doubled down, saying they were acting out scenarios. At that point, I told her to pack a bag and leave. She begged me to let her explain more, but I couldn't listen to any more lies. Now I'm here, trying to process everything. How do you stay with someone who can look you in the eye and lie like that? Part of me misses her, but the other part feels like I don't even know who she is anymore. So yeah, Reddit, that's my story. Any advice on how to move on from this? And has anyone else heard an excuse as ridiculous as this? Now for the top advice. Yeah, that's pretty laughable. She's for the streets. She's also for someone else's sheets. Text Tom, if you have his number, and her and say, she is all yours. I broke up with her. Glad I did because you were not the only one. Now, if you don't have his number, go on your socials and make fun of her excuse for why you broke up. Say, I cannot believe what she said, laugh about it, and end with, looking forward to being single, tagging her in the post. That's as good as my friend's ex-fiancé's. He didn't mean to have sex with another woman. Her reply was, what happened? Did you trip and your penis fell into her? His response was, it's not what you think. She was laughing so hard when she called to tell me that she caught her ex in the act with another woman. I thought she was kidding because of how hard she was laughing. She told me it was true and that it was the easiest breakup she's ever had. Wow, that is a bold lie. Oh my God, that must have been so hard to hear. What a punch in the gut. How to move on? Focus on yourself. Get a new hobby. Take a class. Go on a trip. Hang out with friends you haven't seen in a long time. Buy some new clothes. Move to a new apartment if you rent. Change your life and fill it up with so many things that you're creating new memories so you don't keep thinking about her. Time will make you forget her, but sometimes it takes a while. The more you fill up your life with other things, the faster it will go. Of course, if it was a really bad breakup, you may need some therapy. You don't want to fill up your time so much that you don't heal your wounds. I'm sorry you're going through this. Infidelity sucks. Next story. She slept with someone else and told me that it's not cheating, saying, I said I wasn't seeing anyone. That doesn't mean I can't sleep with people. Female 32 and male 32. We dated for 3 years, broke up, and then several months later, she told me she couldn't imagine her life without me. We aren't official, but I asked her, and you're not seeing anyone anymore, right? She said she was off dating apps and had ended things with the other guy. She started talking about marriage. We spent so much time together. A month and a half later, she went to visit friends for New Year's. One of the people there was a friend she had hooked up with a couple of times during our break. I didn't know this. He wanted more. She didn't. They went to a concert, got high up on K, and slept together. She got pregnant and told me yesterday that she's aborting. I'm so hurt. She's showing some remorse but saying it's not cheating because we're not in a relationship. I feel like it's pretty clear that when we agreed not to date other people, it meant no sex with others. Is this inaccurate? More context. We'll call her Amy. I've always wanted to adopt. I wanted to do it with a partner, but in my 20s, I was dealing with some serious insecurities, and it bled into a lot of my relationships. So things kept falling apart. In my late 20s, I decided to get involved with a group called CASA, working with neglect cases. My plan was to understand the system, get into fostering, and eventually adopt. Then I met Amy. She was fun, pretty, smart, responsible, and a hippie. Big plus for me. Responsible hippies are tough to come by. We hit it off quickly. Her kids came into my life a few months later, and over the years, we bonded. I became a better person with them. I think I always knew I would with kids in my life. They have been a very positive part of my life. Things were good, but Amy and I kept circling around the same issues. We decided we needed to take a break, which ended up being no contact over the summer. I took this time as an opportunity for serious personal growth, therapy, journaling, books, meditation, etc. It was painful, but worth it. A couple of months later, we talked again. She didn't want a relationship. It hurt, but I decided I loved those girls, so we agreed I'd have them once a week. The girls and I made a lot of good memories these last few months. We've become closer than ever. Amy and I started hanging out too. Eventually, she's told me she missed me. She was impressed by who I had become. We started working through our problems. Things were going well. That's where things were before the above happened. You don't have to stay with her based on a technicality. If she did something that you thought she should have known better than to do, then leave the relationship. It's a lot harder to be walked on when you are standing up. I love that. I've never heard that before, but I'm gonna start using that. Thanks, Bill. She started talking about marriage. That implies she was exclusive with you. Why would you start talking about marriage with someone if you are not exclusive with that person? So yes, she cheated. Also, it would be best for you to break up with her definitively. She cannot be trusted. Replies like these actually miss the point and further enable her argument. The point isn't whether it was technically cheating or not. Cheating means different things in all kinds of relationships. The technical definition does not matter. If you argue based on, was it technically cheating, you end up with all these BS posts like, she said it's not cheating because she was imagining it was me. Am I wrong? What matters is she broke your trust. Can you trust her not to do this again? Do you want to be with someone who's going to rulebook referee your relationship? If not, move on. She can think it wasn't cheating if you want. If it's important, when asked why you broke up, you don't have to say she cheated. You can just say she got knocked up by some other guy. Regardless of the terms and conditions of a break, this one isn't a positive contribution to your life. You deserve better. I like this. It's a simplistic approach. It doesn't rely on technicalities or semantics. It's simply recognizing that the person is not a positive contribution to your life and you deserve better. Next story. Caught a guy in my girlfriend's bed last night. 26 female and 24 male. So last night, my girlfriend and I were in a bit of an argument that she initiated. Afterward, I just bit my tongue and apologized to her, but she completely ignored the apology and went on about something else. The argument was about how I didn't feel comfortable with her hanging out alone in her room with this guy, especially after he had made some uncomfortable verbal advances toward her. Later that night, she told me she understood and wouldn't have him in her room alone anymore. But when she went MIA for 2 hours, I got a little curious, and something deep inside me kept telling me to go over to her house. It was like an echoing voice in the back of my head saying, go to her house. So eventually, after I got off my second job, I went over to her house. As I pulled into her driveway, she texted me, saying she had been reading a book. I responded casually, okay, that's cool. I hope you're enjoying the book. Right after I sent that last text, I walked into her room and there he was. This guy we had just discussed, laid up in her bed. She tried to say his ribs were broken and that he needed help. But she's not a nurse or a doctor. So I'm like, WTF? Why would his friends drop him off at her house? Why not take him to the hospital? He could have internal bleeding or something serious. Obviously, I was upset and losing my mind. He started talking smack to me, and I ended up threatening him, but I didn't hurt anyone. She just kept saying he couldn't afford the hospital, but come on. If his ribs are broken, he's eventually going to have to go to a hospital. The whole situation was suspicious from the start, especially since she had just told me she wouldn't have this guy in her room alone anymore. Then she texted me, saying she knows she messed up for not telling me, but she wasn't sorry for it. So I broke up with her right then and there. Mind you, she has a habit of lying to me about various things. Each time I've broken up with her over something like this, she has crawled back to me, begging for me to take her back and acting like she's changed. But at this point, I'm so mentally and emotionally exhausted and drained that I don't even want to eat or work. For the last month, I've only been eating once a day because of the deep depression she's caused me. How do I move on and heal? I recently recovered from broken ribs. You know what you don't do? Drive, cuddle, effing move in any direction because it hurts. Walk away. She's a terrible person and a bad liar. For real. I fell out of a tree as a kid and bruised my ribs, and I could barely do anything. I can't even imagine what breaking them would feel like. No way he was moving around and cuddling if he was actually that injured. Fractured one by jumping out of a tree and hitting a branch on the way down, and it was so painful when I landed I could barely breathe. she's not your girlfriend. Lol, obviously not anymore since I seen that. Young man, you need to move on. You don't want to marry someone who constantly lies. I've had broken ribs, and there's nothing the doctors can do about it. They just wrap your chest, and then they heal on their own. She apparently likes the attention if this guy has been flirting with her. Maybe it's innocent, but most likely, it's going to end up as an affair. Next story. I'm, male 37, lost. My wife, female 37, is now a gay witch. I feel awful sharing this, but I am running out of ideas. My wife and I have been married for almost 15 years, and I feel like I'm in an impossible spot. We've changed so much. Pre-kids, it was as you would imagine, just growing up together and figuring out life. Truly, we were each other's person and best friend. We both came out of religiously traumatic experiences and vowed to keep growing and working through it. Growing as individuals has always been a common goal, and we champion that for each other. However, I'm uncomfortable with where things are going. For context, she became very depressed after our second child was born over 7 years ago. She realized she didn't want to be a mom and developed crippling depression. She was in bed for days, unable to take care of our kids or work. I worked hard to get her the care she needed through therapy and a psychiatrist, as well as taking on full parental responsibilities. And I was fine with that. I didn't resent her. I just wanted her to get better. After a few years, she started to come back and participate in the family, and I was thrilled to see the person I had married again. A big part of her depression was also triggered by her religious trauma. She was raised in a cult-like environment, where she didn't have autonomy over herself until we got married. I have always championed her in finding herself. So here is where it starts getting strange for me. She began exploring more of herself and came out to me as gay, but maybe bi, because she was still very into sex with me. Okay, I thought to myself, I'm not sure what to do with that. Then a few months later, she continued her journey of self-discovery and told me she is a witch and believes she has psychic abilities. Wait, what? I want to be supportive of her journey, but honestly, I am just thrown way off. But the thing that really ticked me off was the next revelation. She had a work conference she was preparing to attend, but right before she left, she suffered a minor stroke. It was terrifying. I thought I almost lost her. It was the worst experience I've ever had. Fortunately, she was okay and would make a full recovery. In discussing her situation with a neurologist, they asked if she was on any antidepressants, which she was, or so I thought. I found out afterward that she had stopped taking them for a couple of months. When I asked why, she didn't want to tell me at first, but eventually admitted that the work conference wasn't actually a work conference. It was a guided LSD session for some healing ritual. Like WTF. She wasn't going to tell me until after, because she knew I wouldn't approve. I am just so lost. I don't know who this person is anymore. I know that when people grow, they change, but this just feels like too much. 1. You've admitted to yourself you're gay. Cool, no problem. We can figure out what to do. 2. You say you're a witch and have psychic abilities. Okay, I think that's silly and don't believe in that stuff, but let's see where it goes. 3. You were dishonest about doing illegal drugs. I feel bad making a decision to leave now because she just had a stroke and depends on me for everything financially. But what the hell? I don't know this person anymore. The claims of having psychic abilities and sudden personality changes sound like she might be having a secondary mental health crisis, especially if she stopped her medication. She needs to see her doctor. She is back on them. As far as I was aware, she was only off them for a couple months. Even with the medication, she seems convinced. That's why I think there's a secondary mental health crisis happening. Antidepressants aren't going to stop psychosis if she actually has an underlying bipolar or schizoaffective disorder. The change almost sounds like mania. Could also be something more physical, especially after seeing she'd had a stroke. That would be my main concern. It's really a shame she didn't or couldn't fully figure all this stuff out before having kids. But I guess the second kid triggered it. Sometimes having kids makes you feel like you're not in control of your own life. You're living for someone else. And ding ding ding, that's exactly the kind of feeling she had when she was in the cult. Spot on. The pressure to get married young was part of the religious system we both came from. Really wish we had more people around us to provide this wisdom. Last story. My 28-year-old male husband cheated on me, 27-year-old female, and I understand why. Can we make this work? I can't believe I'm writing this post, but here I am. My husband cheated on me after being together for 8 years. We have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I know there are no excuses for it. I could never have imagined in my life staying with a cheater. But here I am, wanting to forgive and try to make this work. I know this is not my fault, but I have not been affectionate at all. There are weeks that go by where we don't even kiss or hug each other. We have definitely been in roommate mode for a while. He is 100% of the time the one who initiates any kind of intimacy, and I turn him down 9 out of 10 times. The only reason I have is that I just don't feel like it. He came crying to me today, confessing that he slept with someone 2 weeks ago. Without writing out the long story of how it came about, this was a one-night stand. He had no prior or past contact with this woman. He is begging me to give him a second chance. I am more upset thinking about losing my family than the act of cheating itself, which is so crazy to me. Is it even worth it? Can a relationship ever work after this? Y'all need counseling, not Reddit. Get through that together before you make your next step. Agreed. Individual and couples counseling. My husband had a 6-month affair. I was depressed for years, and we ended up in a similar situation as OP. After 5 to 6 months of individual counseling, we started couples therapy. To OP, it can work as long as both parties are willing to put in the effort to repair themselves and the marriage. Good luck, and I 100% get where you're coming from. I too used to say I would never stay with a cheater, but here I am. Counseling makes a world of difference, and both have to be willing to go the mile. Yep, and maybe counseling will lead them to divorce, because the problem is bigger than just the cheating since their relationship was failing before that. OP needs to figure out why she doesn't want intimacy, and if she will want intimacy again. And if the answer is no, then her husband has to decide if he wants to stay in a sexless marriage. Am I the a-hole for refusing to take care of my parents? My household was negative, to say the least. My parents were strict and controlling, wanting me to become a doctor or lawyer, but all I ever wanted to do was art. I remember showing them my artwork, only to be met with sarcastic remarks. When I told them I was going to college for art and asked for their support, I don't even know why I bothered, since I knew they wouldn't help, unless I was studying something they approved of. As expected, they refused, saying it was my choice, my responsibility. So, I struggled as a broke college student, barely making ends meet while juggling 2 to 3 part-time jobs and keeping up my grades. Now, I own a small art program. A year into my degree, I met my now husband in a small coffee shop. Turns out, he was also a student looking to make friends. By friends, he actually meant a girlfriend, and he asked for my number. I agreed, since he was cute, and now we have 2 kids together. Now at 32, my husband, 34, and I have a happy family. His family became my second family. They helped me through college and never acted like monster in-laws. But now my mom, 66, and dad, 69, have reached out with demands. 1. Meet their grandkids. 2. Move in with us or have us cover their rent. 3. Pay for their hospital/medical bills. Their reasoning? They claim they did so much for me and deserve their happy ending too. I reminded them of their own words, your choice, your responsibility, and told them they needed to work like I did to get by. I wasn't going to help 2 stuck-up pieces of work. I feel like I did the right thing since they abandoned me when I needed help. However, some family members think I'm being unfair. They worked for me so I could eat, etc. Part of me doesn't want to expose myself or my kids to their toxicity, but before making up my mind, I wanted some unbiased outside opinions. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I think it's always crazy when parents say, we did so much for you, providing food, clothes, a place to live, etc., when you were growing up. You didn't ask to be brought into the world. Your parents chose to have kids, and thus chose to take on the responsibility to provide for you. The fact that they're making demands of you, especially expecting you to move them in or pay their rent, is kinda crazy. It would be different if they asked for support and tried to come up with a solution that worked for both of you. Also, the fact that they haven't even met your kids, I don't know how old they are, is a sign that your relationship with your parents has deteriorated. I don't know the full scope of your relationship, but from what you've said, I don't think you owe them everything they're demanding. If you want to help your parents while maintaining boundaries, like helping with some medical bills, that would be a kind thing to do, but not an obligatory one. If this has been a no-contact situation for years due to toxic behavior and they're only reaching out now because they want money, you are well within your rights to say no. Ultimately, you are the only one who can choose how to proceed with your relationship with them. You should also be the one to decide how much or how little you want to get involved again, for your own sake. But you wouldn't be the a-hole for saying no, and the family members calling you one should step up and pay for your parents themselves if they feel so strongly about it. My response to parents saying we owe them because they housed, fed, and clothed us is, congratulations, you did what you were legally obligated to do for the children you decided to have. Not the a-hole. You reap what you sow in life. Your parents did not support your dreams and have apparently not remained in your life, considering they have never even met your children. But now that they need something, they want their investment in you to pay off. Here's the reality. At least from my perspective, children are not a financial investment or a retirement plan. Your parents chose to have you, which means they had a legal and moral obligation to support you for 18 years. You don't owe them anything in return, especially when they didn't support your educational or professional dreams. The family members who think you're wrong can chip in and pay your parents' rent and medical bills. If they don't want to do that, they need to shut up and go away. Next story. Am I the a-hole for giving my dad and extended family attitude after they finally acknowledged my mom regretting she had me? My mom has said more times than I could count that she regretted having me, or that she regretted keeping me. I, 17 female, am my parents' only living child. They had a boy 3 years before me, but he was stillborn. My mom grieved for him basically every day, and she still lives very much like she lost her only child. I always felt my mom's coldness toward me. It wasn't that she would yell at me or tell me she hated me. It wasn't always in her words, except for when she openly admitted to regretting me. It was mostly in the way she'd refuse physical affection from me, like hugs, kisses, or even holding my hand. In the way she'd tell me to go to my dad if I was upset about anything, and how she'd make faces whenever I asked to do something with her. Sometimes, she'd do it with a strict rule that I wasn't to speak or stand too close to her. Other times, she'd tell me no, and it was like she had a full-body shudder at the thought. At her most blunt, she has told me she wishes she'd aborted me and told my dad she miscarried. At her least blunt, she talked about regrets, mistakes, and how annoying those regrets could be when they were in your face all the time. You know, like a little kid would be. She has said it where others should have heard, but my dad and extended family have forever acted like it didn't happen. When I told them about the things my mom said, they told me I misunderstood her. I was told I was a blessing after my brother was stillborn, and that she would never regret her blessing. In front of family, she has talked about how she was almost a real mom before, and how losing my brother made her regret losing her chance to be a mom. They always took it differently than I did, and even when I cried, I was told it was okay. I was just being a kid and not understanding adult context. They finally accepted the truth on Friday night. We were having dinner with my grandparents, 2 of my aunts and their husbands, my uncle and his wife, and several cousins. There was talk about how some of my cousins were having babies and how great it was. There was just a lot of baby talk. Then my mom got upset, and everyone noticed. My dad and one of my aunts asked my mom what was wrong and if she was thinking about my brother. She said she wished she had had another kid or 2 after him, and how she regretted missing out on being a mom. There was a pause and some looks shared, and then my dad told her they had me and that she was a mom. My grandmother told my mom she shouldn't talk like that where I could hear. I rolled my eyes at that and scoffed when she said it. Maybe that wasn't fair. But they were arguing about what my mom was saying, and she told them she regretted ever having me, and regretted not having kids she actually wanted. My mom left on her own before anyone else did, and my dad and extended family started saying how sorry they were that I had to hear that. I got mad and told them I'd heard that stuff before, but they just didn't believe me. I told them I didn't want their comfort when they had ignored me for so long and acted like I never spoke up before. They told me I should understand that it's difficult to imagine something like that actually happening, and that I should give them less attitude since they were at least trying. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. No child should have to hear those things, and I'm sorry you grew up dealing with that. Not the a-hole. It's horrible the egg donor has acted this way for 17 years. It's terrible your family has ignored or explained away this treatment for your entire life. Their acknowledgement is so little so late. You've done nothing wrong, but been treated so wrongfully by all of them. Honestly, I'm in favor of revenge. Identify the big goal, such as college or other post-secondary activity. Start twisting the knife in these people to ensure they fund it, since they let you grow up without a mother or maternal love. Not the a-hole. You should give them less attitude and understand. They owe you an apology where they grovel on their knees for your forgiveness. They need to accept that they were a-holes to a child that was never wanted and was told off when you tried to express how you felt about that. They are not at least trying. They have yet to start trying. Next story. Am I the a-hole for stepping away from my family after my sister brought her daughter's abuser back into their home? Let me provide some background information. I have two sisters-in-law, Rachel and Lauren. Rachel is engaged to Mark, and they have two daughters, Mia, 7, and Sophie, 5. Mark also has a son, Noah, 15, from a previous relationship. A couple of years ago, Mia was violated by Noah. After the abuse was discovered, Noah was sent to live with his biological mother. At the time, Rachel seemed to understand how serious the situation was. However, a few months ago, Noah's mother was arrested, and Rachel and Mark made the decision to bring him back into their home, meaning Mia now has to live under the same roof as the person who abused her. We understand that this was a difficult situation, and we don't pretend there were any easy answers. However, they seem to make this decision very quickly and without fully considering all the facts, something Rachel herself even admitted. From what we can tell, they didn't explore other possible solutions for Noah's placement before deciding that the only option was to bring him back into their home. Instead of weighing the long-term risks to Mia's well-being, they acted out of urgency, without fully acknowledging how damaging this could be for her. My husband and I were horrified. Research overwhelmingly shows that this kind of situation is incredibly damaging to a child's healing. And even my therapist has said that forcing a victim to live with their abuser can have lifelong consequences. Even if Noah never reoffends, the harm has already been done. Mia is being forced to live in a constant state of stress and fear, never truly feeling safe in her own home. Studies show that when survivors are placed back in an environment with their abuser, even under supervision, it can cause severe anxiety, PTSD, depression, and difficulty forming healthy relationships. It reinforces the idea that what happened to them wasn't serious enough to warrant real protection, which can lead to self-blame or a skewed understanding of boundaries. We were even more alarmed because Mia has already started showing signs that this is affecting her. She has been acting inappropriately with other kids, including her own cousin. Clear evidence that she is struggling to process her trauma. Despite this, Rachel insists that everything is being handled and that they are making sure Mia is safe. My husband and I told Rachel that we could not support this decision, and that for the well-being of Mia and our own children, we needed to distance ourselves. However, we are distancing ourselves from Rachel and Mark, not Mia and Sophie. We still love them and want to be in their lives. We have every intention of maintaining a relationship with them and have even planned to have them over for weekends at our house when possible. Our decision was never about cutting them off. It was about not pretending that this situation is okay. Since then, Rachel and my other sister-in-law, Lauren, have accused us of being cruel, making this about ourselves, and punishing Rachel for a difficult decision. They also claim that we are cutting off Mia and Sophie, even though we've made it clear that we still want a relationship with them. They recently had Sophie's birthday party and didn't invite us because they assumed we wouldn't come, yet they still blame us for not being involved. To us, this isn't about punishing Rachel. It's about not pretending that an unsafe situation is okay. Now the family is making us out to be heartless for stepping away, saying we are the ones causing division. But from our perspective, Rachel made a choice that forced us to choose between keeping the peace or standing up for Mia. And we chose Mia. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to support this decision and distancing ourselves from the family? Now for the comments. I'm pretty sure CPS would look the other way, but if there were ever the case, this would be it. Is engage a lawyer and try to get custody of the girls due to the extreme danger they are in. Then I would bypass CPS and call the cops that Ipo is being housed with minors, his victim, and let them sort it out. The court system has said that this living arrangement is okay, according to OP's post. They are not going to remove a child from their parent when they have already ruled that this living situation is safe, even though we all know it really isn't. Essentially, OP has to wait until Noah abuses Mia again and gets caught, or Mia reports it to a trusted adult, and then starts a new investigation. It sucks, but that's how the system works. Why the heck has CPS not been notified? It should have been the first time as well, because as you've now seen with Mia, children who behave inappropriately with other children at a young age are often victims themselves. It's very, very possible that Noah was being abused as well. Not the a-hole for distancing yourself. Huge a-hole if you don't intervene to have the girls removed from the home until a solution is found. CPS was contacted and Noah went through the court system. We were hoping for an inpatient therapy program, which we have in our area, but he was only ordered to do outpatient therapy. Call now and report him as back in the home. Mini update. I have filed a CPS complaint. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not forcing daughter to visit her dad? I have a very complicated co-parenting relationship with my daughter's 13 dad. He lives in another state and rarely visits, only once a year. We do have a court order that states he can have visits, but we need to work them out first. We use a shared calendar. We don't have a lot of scheduled activities, so there are maybe 1 to 3 busy weekends throughout the entire year. In January, he messaged me saying he would be coming over in February. I hadn't put anything on the calendar yet, but I knew we would only be busy one weekend that month. Valentine's Day weekend, which also includes my birthday the next day. That just happened to be the weekend he picked. I told him that wasn't a good weekend, but every other weekend was completely open. He got mad and said no, he was coming that weekend, and there was nothing I could do about it. Honestly, I wasn't going to argue with him. So I informed my daughter that her dad was coming that weekend. She freaked out when she heard the date. She told me her friends had said that her crush was planning on asking her on a Valentine's date, which would be her first ever date. She immediately called her dad and begged him to reschedule. He actually yelled at her, then yelled at me for turning her against him. She ended up hanging up on him and has been ignoring his calls since. She was later asked on a movie date for Valentine's Day, supervised by the boy's mom. When Valentine's Day came, her dad was in town, but she refused to see him and went on her date instead. She has refused to meet up with him at all. I've tried multiple times to get her to see him, even just for a short visit, but she is not budging. He is obviously very mad and is now threatening to call the police and the courts to see if I can be thrown in jail. I've tried talking to her, but I can't physically force her into the car and make her stay with him. So, am I the a-hole? Absolutely not. I had a similar experience with my 13-year-old son. Your agreement states that visits need to be worked out in advance, and it doesn't sound like it was mutually agreed upon, so that's on him. Also, at this age, there's a limit to what you can force your children to do. Their opinions as teenagers will matter to police officers and the courts. In fact, forcing her could work against you. What you need most is a solid relationship with your daughter. Also, OP mentioned that her birthday was the day after Valentine's Day, making it reasonable that they'd have plans. He intentionally picked the one weekend he knew they'd be busy and then demanded it be his time. Not the a-hole. He set this up to make it seem like he was trying to visit, while actually giving himself an excuse to throw a tantrum about not getting his way. He's a major a-hole, and honestly, divorcing him was probably one of the smartest things you could have done. Visits need to be scheduled and agreed upon. He chose to schedule this over your birthday. It'd be obvious even to the dullest person what he was doing. Add to that the fact that it's a holiday and that your daughter already had her own plans. No, he doesn't get to swoop in, dictate when and where he gets to see her, and expect everyone to drop everything. He visits once a year, but do they talk or text in between times? It seems like there's something missing in this story. They can call or text whenever they want. They used to have a few calls a week, but in the past year, it has been dropping. Sometimes he will call and she would answer, say she doesn't want to talk and hang up. She won't talk to me about why. Probably because he only visits once a year. I realized around that age that my dad only spent time with me when it was convenient for him, which didn't include things important to me, like recitals or sports games. Your daughter is probably outgrowing the "my dad is my hero" phase and realizing that you are the one raising her. If her dad really cared, he'd show up for her without demanding she cancel her own plans. Not the a-hole.
First story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my cousin what our family were saying about his wife and causing him to cut everyone off financially?" My uncle had a kid from an affair who he abandoned to the system. My grandmother found out when he was 12 and took him in. This was a huge scandal, not only our family but also our social circle, because everyone is all about appearances and protecting the family legacy. If I'm being honest, my family weren't very nice about my cousin. I remember when he first came to live with our grandparents, my own mother told me not to socialize with him too much in front of outsiders so he doesn't ruin my reputation. I was 8. When he graduated, the family didn't want him involved in the family business because of his parentage and also because he was pretty closed off and was only close to our grandparents and no one else in the family. So our grandfather gave him some money to start something of his own. The family business hasn't been doing well for a long time, but my cousin is doing better than ever. Despite everything, he's been financially helping all of us for a few years now. Recently, our grandparents told everyone he was married and expecting a baby. This was a huge shock to the family. Our grandfather admitted he suspects our cousin got the woman pregnant by mistake and chose to do the right thing based on a few conversations he had with him before he announced his marriage. My family immediately cyber-talked his wife and they said some awful things about her, and everyone was complaining that he could have done so much better. My dad was even encouraging everyone to make things hell for her so she leaves. I told my cousin what they said. I'd like to say I did it for selfless reasons, but I didn't. He's paying for my tuition after my parents refused to help since I dropped out the first time. And based on his personality, I doubt he's going to be very forgiving once they started this crusade against his pregnant wife. Well, he cut everyone off except me and our grandparents. He never told anyone it was me, but since everyone is floundering trying to figure out what they're going to do now and I'm not, it didn't take much for them to figure out I was the snitch. Now, my family are angry at me and calling me all sorts of names. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They never accepted him as a family member. If they never accepted him, why do they deserve his help? They don't. They were mooching off him and only wanted his money. They didn't care about treating him like family. You were right to let him know exactly how they felt about him and his pregnant wife. You seem to actually care and accept him as family, so it's not selfish to let him know. He may be helping you with college, but you care and treat him well. You have accepted him as family. Good job. Not the a-hole. The biggest and best indicator that you're not the a-hole is precisely because what you said below. Now, my family are angry at me and calling me all sorts of names. Your family is messed up, so what they think is wrong is most certainly what's right and decent. Not the a-hole. Stick with the grandparents who've proven they'll stand by their grandchildren, like they did with their cousin. And your cousin who has done things out of the kindness of his heart, but these people have been nothing but awful. Get the hell out of your parents' sphere of influence as soon as you can. Not the a-hole. Never piss off the one holding purse strings. Even if your motive were less than pure, You did the right thing to let him know what they say behind his back. Another saying I heard was, never bite the hand that feeds you. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for forcing my brother-in-law to hold my baby, his nephew, just for a bit while I was folding laundry and traumatizing my brother-in-law? I honestly didn't know the reason why he was so reluctant. This happened a few days ago. So, while I, 25 female, was around 6 months pregnant, my husband, 25 male, was unfortunately furloughed from his job, so we moved into his brother's, 38 male, house. His brother's fairly well off, and I'm not exactly sure what he does for a living, but he's mostly just in his office from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., so I don't really interact with him. I do appreciate that he let us move in while we were in a tight spot. When we moved in, he made it a hard rule that I will have nothing to do with the baby, so don't expect anything from me. But otherwise, y'all can have free reign of the house. That was 5 months ago. Brother-in-law actually doesn't really interact with any of his nieces or nephews. Sister-in-law's kids, 4 of them all under 10, as my husband has told me. Though he does send them gifts for birthdays and stuff, but definitely not an involved uncle. Skip to now, we have a beautiful baby boy, and brother-in-law stayed true to his words of not wanting anything to do with his nephew, and he just mostly stays in his office. My husband thankfully landed a job in the same field as his last job about a week ago. And even better, he's able to work from home. So we're set to move when we can save up a little more. And he was working when everything went down. Yesterday, while I was folding laundry, my son was getting fuzzy and wanted to be held. And at that moment, my brother-in-law came out of his office to grab something. I asked him if he could just quickly hold his nephew while I finished up folding laundry. Casually just says, "Nah, I'm good," and started to walk away. I admit I got really freaking mad at that point. Like he can't even help for a minute while I finish up folding laundry? So I picked up my son and walked over to brother-in-law and placed him in his hands and said, "Just help out. It's just a baby. It won't kill you or anything." My yelling upset my son, so he started crying. He handed me back my child and very coldly says, "I told you, I'm good." And then he quickly retreated to his office. I was left really confused. Then my husband came out of the room he was working in to see what all the commotion was about. I explained what happened, and he just starts freaking out and said I shouldn't have done that, and he goes off to talk to his brother. My husband is now demanding I apologize to brother-in-law and explained something no one has ever told me. Apparently, brother-in-law had a wife 10 years ago who passed during childbirth, and the child later passed due to other complications, and brother-in-law never really got over it. My heart sank. I asked why I was never told this, and all he said is, "My brother's a very private guy, and it wasn't any of your business knowing his past. Please just apologize to him." But I wasn't able to. He has yet to come out of his office or room, and my husband just leaves food at brother-in-law's door. So I want some outside perspective. Am I the a-hole for forcing my brother-in-law to hold his nephew but accidentally opened a pretty bad scar? Now for the top comments. Laughing my butt off. OP. Isn't homeless because brother-in-law was being kind and gracious. Brother-in-law, I just have one boundary. Keep your baby away from me. OP. Gets pissy and forces brother-in-law to hold the baby. Husband, you should apologize for breaking boundaries and picking fights with a man who is keeping a roof over our heads. OP. Shocked Pikachu face. Yeah, you're the a-hole. Not everyone feels comfortable with kids. You already got a freaking house from the guy. You owe him, not the other way around. This is some Greek mythology gourmet stuff. Like, did OP never read legends and myths? When a dude does something benevolent with a strange yet non-harmful boundary, you keep that boundary. No means no. You're the a-hole. You're the a-hole. He said no. No means no. Yes, you're a giant a-hole for bullying a grown man into doing what you wanted. It doesn't even matter why I didn't want to hold your baby, but it does make it that much worse. You owe him a very sincere apology. They literally live in the guy's house, but still thinks it's okay to cross the one boundary he had. You're the a-hole. No means no. He does not mean no, but this one time I'll make an exception, lols. You don't need to know the reason why. You just needed to respect his one house rule. He was kind enough to let you stay there while you and your hubby got back on your feet. and he only had one thing he asked of you, and you still couldn't follow through with that. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my future sister-in-law that I won't be attending her child-free wedding, causing a lot of my other family members to drop out as well? My future sister-in-law is marrying my brother next summer, and they are planning to have a child-free wedding. I have about 3 other sisters and we all have kids, as do most of my cousins at this point. Our family is kinda spread out over the country, and my brother/sister-in-law's wedding is out of the state for most of us. Once I found out they wanted to make it child-free, I began to lose interest in going to the wedding. I don't want to be away from my kids for a couple of days, and it is just a hassle to find them living arrangements for when my husband and I are gone, especially since most of our adult family members will be at the wedding. We'd have to leave the kids with some friends. However, I get that it is her wedding and her decision, so I just declined to go, stating that I don't want to leave my kids alone without any family to watch them. After I dropped out, my other sisters got the courage to drop out as well, as they also have toddlers they didn't want to leave behind for a couple of days. Then, my cousins began declining to come as well. Now, it has become a huge deal in the family and caused a lot of drama. My brother has called me and yelled at me, saying that I was the one who caused all the problems. I was firm when I told him I wasn't going to his wedding unless I could bring my kids, and that all our sisters/cousins pretty much felt the same way. My parents, who are paying for half of their wedding, are also pissed that so many family members on our side aren't coming. They were already somewhat against the idea of a child-free wedding in the first place, and have now started pressuring sister-in-law to not make it child-free. My sister-in-law refuses to meet in the middle, and says the wedding will remain child-free, but she's also mad at all of us for not coming. She also still expects my parents to help pay for it, which I doubt they'll do at this point. Lol. I'm fine with her having a child-free wedding. I just don't want to be part of it if it means being away from my kids for days. Am I the a-hole? Edit. People keep asking why I'm mostly talking about my sister-in-law and not my brother in the post. I know for a fact my brother was okay with having kids at the wedding. It's the norm in our family, and he loves his nieces/nephews. It's my sister-in-law who wants this to be a child-free thing against the wishes of like 95% of our family and still have my parents foot the bill. My brother's just supporting her to make her happy. Edit. She has an entire 4-day itinerary planned with like 6 events that she expects to all be child-free. Are all of us with toddlers and kids supposed to swing back and forth from hiding our kids in hotels with random sitters to all the wedding activities just to keep my psycho sister-in-law happy? And then pay for it because she sure as hell won't, since our kids are our problems, as she stated to my face. You're the a-hole because you don't seem to know what meet in the middle means. She wants her wedding to be child-free. You want her wedding to not be child-free. You think she won't meet in the middle because she's not changing to what you want. It's super common to have group babysitting at the hotel. All your siblings/cousins can pool resources and get a few people to stay a few hours at the hotel and watch the kids. Maybe even have your parents pay for it as part of the wedding fees. If you don't want to go, don't go. But it doesn't seem like you're trying to actually work something out. Yeah, I don't get how child-free wedding translates into I'd have to leave the kids at home. And if OP is going to complain about spending money to bring kids to the location, they'd have to spend that money if the kids were invited. There's really barely any difference. Everyone brings their kids. A couple of cousins or family friends take turns with childcare while the rest go to the wedding. Trust me, as a kid, I hated having to go to weddings. Hanging out at a hotel pool would be so much more appealing to me. Not the a-hole. People are entitled to a child-free wedding, but they also have to understand that it's not going to be realistic for most people to leave their kids for days, especially young ones. This should have been an anticipated consequence of a child-free wedding. Your sister-in-law shouldn't have to change her child-free wedding, but she also doesn't get to be mad at out-of-state parents for not coming. I can't believe I had to scroll so far to find this comment. An invitation isn't a summon. If not taking your young children isn't a viable option, then you're fully allowed to decline. Not the a-hole. You're the a-hole. First of all, you're not fine with it, so stop saying you are. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. Second, you've now orchestrated a full-on boycott of her wedding, whether intended or not, and you seem to think it's funny. That's cruel. I don't think this is about the kids. I think you just don't like her and won't admit it because it makes you look bad. If you love your brother, you would find a way to be there, period. I have a hard time believing that there's no possible way you can group the kids together with a babysitter for a few hours. Of course you can, but you don't want to. I'd be crushed if I were her, receiving this welcome into the family. Also, she's blaming only her sister-in-law, as if her brother has nothing to do with it. The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out after she didn't do what she said she would? I, 21 female, had a baby 8 days ago via scheduled cesarean. The father isn't around, and I knew he wouldn't be since day one. My sister, 29, we'll call her Annie, fake name, is recently divorced and suffers with infertility. Every time there's a new baby in the family, she offers to help out. Annie asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks after the baby is born and for the few days before to help out. I said yes, knowing I'd need help. The problems started from when we came home. Annie takes her, like literally does everything baby-related, except for nappy changes. She creates mess, which I end up having to clean up everything, while trying to cook for myself/order food, and it has to be done to Annie's preference too if I'm ordering. 5 days ago, I started recording the amount of time I spent with my baby versus what Annie did. Over the last 5 days, I spent a total of 8 hours with my baby, Annie nearly all the rest of the time. I tried asking her to step back a bit and help out with chores like she said she would, but she got defensive. Things got on my last nerve today around an hour ago, realizing she hadn't actually given me back my child all day except once to change her. I'm not really sure what got into me, but I lost my cool. I told her to get out and not come back until she can learn to respect that this is not her baby, and stop taking over everything except the gross bits. My mom called me, saying it was a nail move since Annie just wants a baby of her own. And I said that I don't care. I have barely got to see my own child. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add, sudden outburst was caused by her practically refusing to give me my baby. Now for the top comments. My mom called me, saying it was an a-hole move since Annie just wants a baby of her own. But this baby is not available. It's not hers. It's yours and yours only. If she wants one so badly, she should look into adoption. Absolutely not the a-hole. Exactly, not the a-hole. It is important for you to bond with your baby, not only her. She needed to realize that she couldn't push you around and literally hog your baby. Not the a-hole at all. Tell your mom that what your sister wants is not your problem. You want your baby. Pete's sake. Not the a-hole. It sounds like your sister needs some therapy to deal with her infertility. Or just adopt.